the dangerous groups that we're dealing with now. It was a nightmare.
Flight 807, you're clear for landing. Runway 7, Bravo.
All personnel report to the nearest tornado shelter. This is not a drill.
If you need help, then dial your operator.
Have no fear, fellow citizens. The Mediator is here.
Good morning and welcome to this week's edition of The Mediator with your host Brian West, here to give you the top 8 headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. Now, as usual, I'll give you the top 8 local headlines and developing news stories that made it first, followed by a movie clip, a skit, a trailer, something that's going on in the community, or maybe some pictures, and then I'll give you the top 8 international headlines and developing news stories that made it, folks. So let's waste no time. Ooh, yeah. Let's get to it. Story number 1, another downtown work delay makes headlines. Charles Sasho, the city's deputy director of public works, says that the downtown improvement project has reached a buffer point, but assures the city that the work will be done by the end of the year to beat its federal deadline. Now, we got the story in is the federal amount tied to the project. The cost is about $27.65 million for the project on several downtown streets. Now, the project received $10.85 million in federal funding already, but according to the report, has faced one delay after another. Now, what has this story trending is the fact that the work was supposed to be finished last October. Most of the work is done, but apparently an underground First Energy electrical vault, weather, and supply chain issues are all cited in a local Vindicator article report as reason for delays in the work being done on East Front Street in downtown. Story number 2, another problem at 20 Federal Place. Another problem for Youngstown. $96.2 million is the estimated cost of redeveloping the downtown 20 Federal Place building. Now, according to multiple local reports, the headlines incite that the costs have soared. The estimated cost was only $60 million at first, but it's clear that what is developing in this story could be the result of another bad decision made by Youngstown. Their structure put in place, if you want to be light about it. Now, the city got rid of the tenants and decided to move forward with Desmond Architects' plans. This is what's in this story. I have to be slow with this week's headlines. Now, there are some startling talking points in this report. The city received a $6.96 million Ohio Brownfield Remediation Program grant. The city is providing $2.32 million in funding for the work at the building. The remediation and partial demolition work needs to be finished by June 30th under the conditions of the state grant. Now, whatever the vision is for 20 Federal Place, whatever the vision is, it may need to be addressed by the city soon if deadlines and cost goals are to be met or are not. Story number 3, bullets on I-680. Folks, another gun story in the news for the city after a barrage of bullets killed two people on I-680. A male and a female were killed after a vehicle traveled on Interstate 680 northbound and was hit by gunfire. The story goes on to describe the mystery behind the entire incident and paints a picture in the minds of readers that two people were just driving and were hit by gunfire, but something more is in this story. The story goes on to mention more about the investigation, but leaves readers with a blank space in the mind on what actually took place. And the crime stories that continue to make headlines at the end of the year and into the new year have left a continued bitter taste on Youngstown because the 2% is causing so many problems. When I say 2%, that 2% is the people committing all the crimes. It's hindering the city from cleaning up its image. Story number 4. $2.4 million federal grant. North Jackson will receive a $2.4 million federal grant for an improvement project set to come from the U.S. Economic Development Administration. According to local reports, the project will create 140 jobs and generate $5 million in private investments, according to the EDA. Now, the project includes road paving, repaving, the replacement of Mahoning Avenue Bridge, number 23, drainage enhancements, new signals, and the widening of some intersections. Story number 5, 8 candidates for appeals court seats. Let's get through all these names. If I get any incorrect, please forgive me. I am a human being. Ashley J. Musick of Cortland, Connie J. Lewandowski of Aurora, Michael De Leon of Concord, Eric A. Condone of Madison, Pamela Kirk of Willowick, David D. Tech of Girard, Catherine Jacobs of Chagrin Falls, and Matthew Rambo of Novelty in Geauga County. These are all of the candidates seeking the position. Story number 6, new prosecutor vibes already making news. Democrats choose Gina DeGenova to take over for the retired Paul Gaines as prosecutor. Gaines, well, DeGenova is a 17-year assistant prosecutor of Gaines who received the popular vote over Brad Gessner. Story number 7 and the top 2 local headlines and developing news stories that have made it this week. Strictly for you. Homemade, brewed up, read through, examined, navigated, only for you, the viewer. And there is nothing else you have to do but tune in, watch, and someday maybe even be a contributor. Story number 7. Everybody's calling for help these days, folks. The number of EMS calls show that emergency services are in high demand. The highlighting topic in this report is the fact that in 2022, Mahoning and Trumbull counties responded to more than 69,000 calls. Story number 8, and the top local headline and developing news story that made this week, folks, for you, to keep you informed. Story number 8, top 8. Folks, it is, I have to mention this for locally because there's a lot of local historians who have passed on. And I often get in arguments at my store. Don't ask me how they happen, but with people trying to, they come in and people obviously want to do the right thing. They want to serve the community. And there's a lot of hardworking people who are fighting for Youngstown. And Martin Luther King Day is tomorrow, well, today if you're watching the show today, but tomorrow if you're watching the show on Sunday. And I can't help but to shout out all the people who are living a normal life and they get called to do extraordinary things for this country, for the people they represent. And that's what Martin Luther King stood for. He stood for union workers, people who didn't have a lot of say, they didn't have the platform. So, but there are some people who are still in the battle to this day just for basic stability in this country, and just of all races, creeds, and colors. That's why I had to shout out a lot of people, and I'm just one of those people. I have to take a beating every week. I mean, I get up, and sometimes I don't even know where my blessings are going to come from. So that's why these stories are important to me. They may not be important to you, but I have to put in the work so you can at least stay informed. I may not be all the glitz and glamour on you get some of these news stations, but I'm putting in a lot of work. I'm not gonna lie to you. So let's get to the story number 8. Story number 8. Story number 8. $50.8 million in income tax collections. This story was just bound to make it at the top. Like Girard, Youngstown's income tax collections hit a record high of $50.8 million in 2022. That's 7.25% more. It will increase than the 47 49,440,000 that was projected, beating the old record of 49,815,000 in 2006. Now, Finance Director Cal Miasak cites wage increases as a factor. He also stated a continued concern about those working outside of the city not contributing to the income tax base. So story number 8, making it this week, serving the Mahoning Valley, folks. That's what these stories have been all about this week. Well, folks, those are our top 8 local headlines and developing news stories that made this week. I'll be right back with the top 8 international headlines and developing news stories. So don't you go anywhere. You're in the media with me, Brian West. I'll be right back.
Tune in and don't forget to subscribe to Method 8 Inc. YouTube channel. You can also watch free public entertainment. And don't forget to show some support by visiting www.method8inc.com by buying something, clicking something, watching something, or just reading something. You can also sponsor a program as well. That's www.method8inc.com. Buy stuff, watch stuff, or read stuff.
What does Method8inc.com Media Center have that I need?
Small prints, event consulting, photography, business consulting, technical consulting, entertainment consulting, fundraising advice, event videography, movies, news, publishing, media, books, entertainment, acting, broadcasting, public relations, access to the visual and performing arts, ink and black ink refills, audio recording, graphic design, theater, minor computer and cell phone repair, and they're located at 5648 Market Street in Boardman, Ohio from 10 a.m. until 6 p.m. every Monday through Friday. The list goes on and on.
Method8inc.com. Buy stuff, watch stuff, or read stuff.
Oh yeah! And yes, we are chipmunks.
Living, he loved me. Dying, he saved me. Buried, he carried my sins all away. Rising, he justified. He had me forever. One day he's coming back. What a glorious day. Send it on down, Lord. Send it on down, Lord. Lord, let your Holy Ghost come on down. Send it on down, Lord. Send it on down, Lord. Lord, let your Holy Ghost come on down. Hey.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Now it's time to get to the top 8 international headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. Folks, this January, this month is the day we celebrate Martin Luther King Day, the holiday that was fought for. A lot of people don't really know the story about Dr. King. They don't know the inside. They just think the guy just went around giving speeches, but he was giving those speeches because there was a lot going on in America at that particular time. The Republican, Dr. Martin Luther King, was an ordinary man. He voted Republican. He smoked cigarettes. They even have recordings of him doing things that ordinary people do. I mean, some bad, some good. But they say that what made the man unique was the fact that he had the heart. And there are stories that say when they did the autopsy that his heart, when he died, was bigger than his normal size. So the story, I have to go through stories every week, and I have to add these stories up, but the story is unbelievable. Some people are confused about even what Dr. King wanted, but it was simple. Equal rights, fair treatment, not just for blacks, but for all people. And then at the end of the day, to put the cherry on top about the dream, the American dream. All my life, I've had to find some motivation. I learned about Dr. King in junior high school. And if we can do anything as Americans, one thing we can learn is that every person in this country will one day be faced with a choice to go in any direction. But the belief that Dr. King had in his heart was the belief that he was doing the right thing and fighting for the greater good of the public, the state of the union of all Americans. And that's what I'll be thinking about this holiday. Standing alone in a room, getting up every day not being paid what you're worth, some people being incarcerated, all because of their belief in one thing, and that's the dream. Well, folks, full of inspiration today, and that dream has become a reality, folks. Well, folks, what we do with that reality is done in our choices every day. Let's get to the top 8 international headlines and developing news stories. Let's get to it. Story number 1: the chess pieces could be moving towards Taiwan, and here's why. When we talk about the global chessboard here in America, now understanding Taiwan's position on the globe could explain why the country is in major headlines with China. Now, one report even goes as far to state that a Chinese invasion of Taiwan would fail at a huge cost to the United States. Now, Chinese and Taiwanese militaries are all in this report because they're saying that an invasion would be catastrophic for all these militaries. Now, another headline even speaks on how Ukraine has inspired Taiwan to bolster military preparedness with a threatening China. So the little pieces are getting prepared just in case these bigger pieces decide to just start blowing and getting crazy. Now, this story is another trending story catching the eye of those watching the global chessboard because something is happening with bigger nations wanting either Americans or other enemy nations out of their business, and these smaller nations are getting upset. That's why story number 1 made it this week. Big headline. Story number 2: IRS vote makes headlines. A few IRS stories seem to be gaining some steam. Now, one headline by Fox News says that the IRS has targeted poorer taxpayers while millionaires have gone mostly unscathed in 2022. Now, according to the report, the IRS has audited the lowest income tax bracket 5 times more than the members of the higher tax brackets. Now, the article goes on to mention the data found in these reports. Now, other headlines that caught news analysts' attention states that House Republicans have voted on a bill to abolish the IRS, eliminating income tax, and replace it with a national consumption tax. Georgia Republican Rep. Buddy Carter has reintroduced a Fair Tax Act, which aims to reel in the IRS, according to the report. This story is still developing. That's why story number 2 crept in this week. Fact or fiction, but there's something happening with the IRS, and these 2 headlines prove it. Big headlines. Story number 3: border issues mount. Active members of ICE and appointed Border Patrol agents continue to make headlines after a GOP senator weighed in on ICE losing track of 150,000 illegal migrants due to a lack of processing. Now, this is according to a Fox News report. Now, pressure remains on the Biden administration after he released a new plan to accept up to 30,000 migrants each month, while also expanding on a Trump-era policy to make it easier to send many Mexicans back to Mexico, or anybody trying to cross the border. Now, only time will tell how this impacts the U.S.-Mexico border. According to NBC News, Congress has failed for over 2 decades to reform immigration. The detailed article does provide a timeline. It is a must-read that goes all the way back to George Bush in 2001. Story number 3. It's a big headline. Story number 4. Nurses going to the strike option. After more than 7,000 nurses decided to go on strike over pay and staffing in New York, more medical issues continue to mount for America at this pivotal time in history and time. This story is keeping the attention on the needs of a faulty medical system, but could spark more attention on alternative methods. That's why story number 4 crept in this week. Well, folks, those are our top 4 international headlines and developing news stories that made this week. I'll be right back with the top 4, so don't you go anywhere. You're in the Mediator with me, Brian West. I'll be right back. If you want to check out the stories that almost made it in or did make it in, go to our Twitter feed on our website, Check out everything. All of the sources are there. And go to the website. It's method8inc.com. Method8inc.com, where you can buy something, click on something, watch something, read something, or just sponsor a program. Welcome back. Welcome back. Now it's time to get to the top 4 international headlines and developing news stories that made us week. Folks, sometimes I come in here and people are probably wondering, well, what do? You know, you get these guys to get prepared for sports. They got their headphones on and they're getting ready to battle and break somebody's leg or give somebody a life-threatening hit. And they probably say, well, Brian, what do you do to get motivated for a news program? And to be honest with you, I really, it is kind of tough. I do have to pump myself up. So sometimes I'll go and I'll watch maybe like a few videos. I have a bunch. Sometimes I'll listen to some gospel tracks. I mean, I really have no motivation, but I do try to. I have to kind of get motivated to do the work. That's the hardest part. So when some say, Brian, what do you do to prepare for a show? Sometimes I watch Narnia scenes when the lion is sacrificed for those people who really, some of them have no clue. Some of them sit there and watch him give his soul so that all mankind could have a better life. Sometimes I do. Sometimes that's what my show prep is. I'm not gonna lie to you, because sometimes every week I feel like I have to come in this week and save the world by trying my best to keep people informed. Good luck, Brian. Good luck. I hope I don't have to lose my strength in the battle. Well, I've already lost my mind looking at every story every week, because some of these stories will blow you away. Well, folks, enough chatter. Let's get to it. Story number 5. How does a 6-year-old shoot a teacher? Speaking of sacrifice and time, teachers, Martin Luther King did fight for education. Teachers, coaches, and even daycare workers are all saying the same thing, folks. Kids are somehow getting out of control. If you listen to the stories, not all kids, some, most. If you listen to the stories, you may hear the same thing over and over again. I'm doing my job. It's the parents or the kids. They're not listening. Somehow this story shot to the top headlines after a 6-year-old shot a teacher, a 6-year-old. This is after a year of increased mass shootings and suicides to now a gun story, another gun story of a teacher being shot, but this time by a 6-year-old child. This event took place in Newport News, Virginia, and is still turning some heads on how it happened. Story number 5, big head. Story number 6, the economic stories are not looking good. Analysts all over are preparing for a global recession. According to the BBC, economists are only expecting the world economy to grow by just 1.7% this year. Now, they're blaming the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the impact of the pandemic. Now, there is so much tied into this still growing story, but people who understand the world markets and money are not happy. They're upset because they see their investments go to waste. Now, this is a serious story that is already causing streams of confusion and frustration. There are 2 stories fueling the uncertainty. As stated, the global bank has cut the economic forecast that they had projected. And for the first time in 80 years, there will be 2 global recessions in 1 decade. Story number 6 almost made it to the top 2. Story number 7 in the top 2 international headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. Folks, yes, I don't have a girl. And yes, I am on my last dime. And yes, my show may not be filled with angles and big commercials and all types of expensive newscasters, but I still feel like $1 million, baby. Whew. Story number 7. I can do it. Oil stories keep making headlines. Countries are making headlines because they're making moves China has cut a deal with the Taliban to extract oil in Afghanistan. Now, this could spark new assumptions and stories about Biden's plan to pull out of Afghanistan, swinging the pendulum back to the right if this deal shifts any ties. Now, it could also continue to spark conversations about energy independence goals that were eliminated by President Biden. Now, at the moment, Biden looks very, very weak when it comes to what many see as common sense decisions. Now, there is a lot happening in the energy market, and the more the pressure builds, the more things could pop. Pressure busts pipes. That's why story number 7 made it to the top 2, because people need oil, because they need the energy. Big hit. Story number 8 in the top. Local headline and developing news story that made it this week. Martin Luther King Day. Woo, we shall overcome someday. We shall overcome with peace and harmony. Some people just can't put down the guns, but we shall overcome. Yeah. The memories. We shall overcome. The sleeping issue with COVID, folks. The damage done by COVID-19 has been catastrophic. Everybody knows that. Goldman Sachs plans to lay off up to 3,200 workers this week. That's bad. The thing to eye is where they plan to cut. According to CNN Business, the cuts are expected to be from the firm's trading and banking units. The company had 49,100 employees at the end of the third quarter, and according to the report, added thousands of jobs to its headcount during the pandemic recovery. But the article goes on to cite the mood on Wall Street as a factor to dwindling hopes after the Federal Reserves and other central banks started aggressively raising borrowing costs. Now, financially, the cost to manage through COVID-19 hasn't been good at all. People have died, inflation is bad, and financially, projections are dwindling hope. The beginning of a recovery may have just begun, folks. Well, folks, those are our top 8 local and international headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. I hope you got something out of today's program. I always get something out of doing the research. As usual, I thank all the news outlets, the journalists, the people on the front lines. You deserve all the credit. I'm just the media, the man in the middle. If you want to show some support here at Method, it does not take much. All you have to do is visit the website on the screen, buy something, click on something, watch something, read something, order a sponsored program. If you want to learn more about Martin Luther King and Black History Month as we get headed into, I really advise you to take the time to read about some of those stories. Very inspiring, very moving, and really, really will get you to understand that there is a choice you can make at the end of the day. And a lot of people choose to make a choice that is for the betterment of the future. And that's what I get out of this holiday. So thank you so much for tuning in this week. I'll be back next week looking through 200 or more stories just to keep you informed, folks. Have a good week, everybody. Thank you for tuning to the Mediator. Me, Brian West. Peace.
Have no fear, fellow citizens. The Mediator is here.